So we started with 68 teams and now we're down to just 4, and I truly believe every single team has a legitimate shot at winning the national championship, but only one actually will. So today we're breaking down both Final Four matchups and making our predictions for both the Final Four and the national championship game. And real quick, before we get into my predictions, I wanted to mention that this video is sponsored by Kalshi. And Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the US, and right now if you sign up and use code TBN, you can get $10 when you trade your first $10. And what makes Kalshi different is that you're trading against other people rather than a sportsbook, and it's available to use in all 50 states. And with the last weekend of the tournament almost here, there's no better time than sign up than now. So if you're interested, make sure to visit the link in the description to Kalshi and use code TBN. But now let's get into my predictions. And let's start with UConn versus Illinois, because this is going to be a very fun game to watch, and UConn finds themselves now back in the Final Four for the third time in what has been 4 years, and at this point it's not even surprising to me anymore, and this is just what this team does in March. Dan Hurley is now 17-3 in the NCAA tournament at UConn, and this team just showed exactly why they're so dangerous in the tournament by coming back from 19 down to beat Duke in what might have been the game of the tournament so far, and it was obviously highlighted by Braylon Mullen's last second deep three, which will go down as one of the best shots not only in this tournament but in NCAA tournament history in my opinion. But the biggest reason to me that this team is still in the tournament and has found themselves in the Final Four, it's because of Taurus Reed Jr., who has completely changed the ceiling for this UConn team with his play so far. He's been dominant on the inside in March Madness, scoring 20 or more points in 3 of his 4 games in the tournament, and more importantly, he gives UConn something that they can consistently rely on when the perimeter shooting isn't there, because so far it really hasn't been that great in the tournament. And that's my biggest concern with this UConn team, because this team hasn't been consistent from 3, which is really surprising when thinking about the types of shooters that we have on this team with Solo Ball, Braylon Mullins, Alex Caravan. And against an elite defense that will matter, but they didn't shoot the best against Duke, and they were able to come back and win that game obviously. And UConn is actually the underdog in this one against Illinois. The line is at 2.5, and on Kalshi they only have a 45% chance right now of winning this game, and I can somewhat see why, because of what Illinois has been doing, as they've been pretty much dominant to get all the way to the Final Four so far in the tournament. And right now the Illini aren't only one of the best offenses in the country, they're now playing like one of the best defenses in the country as well, and they're using their size across their entire roster to really give issues to some other teams. And right now they're number 1 in KenPom offensive efficiency and top 3 in offensive rebounding, and they have the size to overwhelm almost anyone, which does give me a bit of concern for a UConn team that doesn't necessarily have the deepest front court. Obviously you have Taurus Reed, Alex Caravan's playing the 4, and then you got Eric Ryba who comes off the bench, but that's about it. And I truly think what has allowed this Illinois team to get to the Final Four has been this defense, because that has changed everything for them. They just held VCU, Houston, and Iowa all under 60 points en route to the Final Four, and suddenly they look like a complete team on both ends of the floor, not just an elite scoring group that we've been used to. And that's where I think this matchup could flip, because if Illinois can limit Taurus Reed, who has been UConn's most consistent player all tournament long, or even get him into foul trouble, UConn's entire offensive structure could begin to crack, and then that could lead to a 3-point battle where Illinois takes a ton of threes, and if UConn is not hitting, that could be a big problem. And I think ultimately Taurus Reed and his availability throughout this game is going to be the ultimate swing factor of who is going to win this one and who's going to lose. But at the end of the day in this matchup, I think experience wins out, and even though Illinois right now might be playing a little bit better, they might shoot it better from deep, they have a lot of size in the front court, UConn has that championship pedigree. They've been here before, and they know exactly what it's going to take to get back to the national championship. And when your coach is Danny Hurley, who is one of the best at making adjustments in the middle of the game, it's really hard for me to doubt you in the Final Four, and that's exactly why I'm actually taking UConn in this matchup. Reed has been the most consistent matchup advantage on the floor night in and night out in every single one of UConn's games, and we've already seen this team make an in-game adjustment at the highest level when they came back from 19 against Duke to upset them in the end. And in a tight game, which I think this will be, I just trust that more. And because of their experience and with a coach like Danny Hurley, I've got UConn getting the win over Illinois and advancing to the national championship game. And on the other side, we have Arizona going up against Michigan. So we got our two #1 seeds, and honestly, these have been two of the most dominant and physical teams in the entire country all season long, and it's no surprise that they both made it here. And this might be the most physical game that we're going to see in the entire tournament, and it could be entirely decided in the paint with how dominant both of these front courts are. And for Arizona, they don't just attack at the rim, they have overwhelmed their opponents en route to the Final Four so far in the paint. They're top 5 in the country in both paint points and #1 in free throw attempts, and they just dropped over 100 points in an NCAA tournament game while barely shooting and making threes, and that's almost unheard of with college basketball nowadays. But that's just how dominant this Arizona team is at getting to the rim and finishing. And I truly believe that's what makes this team so dangerous, is they don't rely on the shooting variance because they don't need to get hot from deep in order to win games. They just keep coming at you, it seems like, possession after possession, and they continue to wear you down. And we saw that in their Elite 8 matchup versus Purdue when they completely flipped that game in the second half after being down at halftime. And it's one of the biggest reasons why I'm surprised that Arizona actually isn't favored in this one, as Michigan is a 1.5 point favorite. And on Kalshi, Arizona's only at a 48% chance of winning this game and advancing to the national championship. But to be honest, Michigan might be the best team to handle Arizona's front court and what they do offensively, because they're just as big, just as physical, and statistically, they're one of the best interior defenses in the entire country with Ade Mara, Merez Johnson Jr., and Yaxel Lindeborg. They're top 5 in 2-point defense in the country, top 5 in block rate as well, and offensively, they're shooting over 61% from inside the arc, and I'm really interested to see how Arizona's bigs match up on the defensive end with Michigan's bigs, because when Michigan is playing at their peak, they might actually have the highest ceiling of any team in the country. They love to get out and run, and once they were able to do that against Tennessee, the game was over at that point. And honestly, in the Elite 8, the Wolverines just took over on both ends of the floor, and that's something that you see in teams that are going to win a national championship. So the biggest question for me in this matchup is what happens when these two elite paint teams collide, because Arizona basically has to win on the inside in order to win the game, but for Michigan, they do have the ability to step out and hit that three-point shot. We've been seeing it from Namari Burnett and Trey McKinney. Elliot Cadeau hit a couple as well, and Yaxel Lindeborg has been shooting lights out recently in the tournament as well. And I think another key piece of this matchup is actually the fact that Arizona gets to the line a ton in their games, and they practically live there, and it's one of the big reasons why they've been so dominant all season long. But Michigan is pretty good at playing defense and not fouling, so if Arizona can't get to the free throw line like they normally do, that could pose an issue. But at the end of the day, I truly believe Arizona has just been the most consistent team all season long, despite those back-to-back losses they took in the Big 12. They won the Big 12 conference, which to me is the best conference in all of college basketball. And truly, they don't just rely on the paint because, as I mentioned, they do like getting to the free throw line, and they can shoot when they need to. It's just they don't have to take that many because they have dominated on the inside all season long. They also have great offensive rebounding. They got two really good guards in Jaden Bradley and Braden Burries. And playing against this team for 40 minutes just wears you down. And in the end, I think guards do win in March, and I just trust this Arizona backcourt more. Big 12 Player of the Year, Jaden Bradley's obviously on the team, like I mentioned. Braden Burries might be the best player on this team, and Koa Pete is starting to get back to what we saw earlier in the season. And I haven't even mentioned that I believe Arizona has better depth off the bench than Michigan right now, especially with the injury to LJ Kaysen, who won't be able to play for the Wolverines in this matchup. So although I think Michigan is going to go on some runs and have stretches where they look like the better team in this game, I think Arizona overall is going to win. So I've got Arizona beating Michigan and advancing to the national championship game where they'll face off with UConn. So like I mentioned, I got Arizona and UConn going up against each other in the national championship game, and this could be one of the best possible matchups that we could ask for a national title game. We actually saw these two teams play earlier in the season, and Arizona was able to get the win at UConn, but UConn was without two of their best players in Taurus Reed Jr. and Braylon Mullins, and this matchup going up against each other at full strength would be awesome to see. And these are two teams we see with Arizona being extremely strong and physical, and then UConn obviously has that championship experience. And to me, this game comes down to one question, and that's, can UConn control the paint against a team that might be even better at it and have one of the best and most dominant front courts in the country? Because UConn's path to victory time and time again in this tournament has been clear. They've gone to Reed early, he's dominated, they've controlled the tempo, and then they rely on their experience in the end. But for Arizona, they can do something that very few teams can do, and they can match the size, and they're probably even bigger than what UConn is. They can also match the physicality that Taurus Reed Jr. in this front court plays with, and then they bring that relentless pressure on the defensive end for a full 40 minutes. And unlike most teams UConn has faced, Arizona doesn't need to shoot well to win, because they've proven that they can win ugly, they can win in a physical manner, and they can win in so many different ways, which could cause some real problems from Dan Hurley and the UConn Huskies. But I will say, if UConn can get that three-point shot going, they definitely have a chance to win this game, and I believe they have the shooters to do so. They just haven't been that consistent at it so far this tournament, but who says in the national championship game they can't be? But over the course of not only this tournament, but just this entire season, the most consistent team in the country has been Arizona, and it seems like they've got the formula of what it takes to win a national championship. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be taking the Arizona Wildcats to win the national championship and cap off what has been probably the best season in Arizona Wildcat basketball history. But that wraps it up for this one. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on my predictions for the Final Four. Also, who do you think is making the national championship game? And then who do you think is going to win it all? Also, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.